Hello and welcome to Arts Business Collaborative's Help Desk. We will be starting momentarily. Arts Business Collaborative's Help Desk. We will be starting momentarily. Hello and welcome to Arts Business Collaborative's Meet the Consultant. I would like to take the time to introduce myself. My name is Lydia Tyler. I'm the programs manager for Arts Business Collaborative. Welcome to Meet the Consultant. We are super excited to have you and want to allow you to hear and share in the conversation. Hello, and welcome to Arts Business Collaboratives. One moment, we're having some technical difficulties. I would like to take the time to introduce myself.
Yes. I don't know if you can hear me, but you were muted, so I couldn't hear anything that you said. I'm hoping that I came in at the right time.
You did. I'm so sorry. And I didn't even realize I'm juggling all the screens right now.
Okay.
So let me just make sure I introduce you well. Let me make sure everyone hears what I did say. So Pamela J. Oakes is a consultant and fundraiser and developer based in Seattle, Washington. Pamela helps nonprofit organizations share their story. She's a great storyteller, and she focuses on fundraising and development. She's the founder of and CEO of The Profitable Nonprofit, which is a consultant agency with over 35 years of combined professional experience in philanthropy and fund development, as well as inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Pamela J. Oakes is on a personal mission to increase the distribution of philanthropic resources earmarked for under-resourced and underrepresented marginalized communities by building capacities in BIPOC-led nonprofits, charities, and social impact enterprises. Thank you, Pamela, for joining us for this Meet the Consultant.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So I want to jump right in because I really had a wonderful conversation with you when we started talking and working together around the idea of a personal story. So my first question to you is, what is the Profitable Nonprofit's personal story and how you got to where you are?
Right. Well, a great question. My personal story is that I have always been in nonprofits. That's always been my passion and what I've been involved in. I had the opportunity to work overseas. I had been doing some short-term humanitarian projects, and I love that type of work. I love being able to get into communities, help communities transform, and help transformation take place and empower individuals. So when I had the opportunity to move overseas, of course, I jumped on that opportunity. And I was working overseas in Johannesburg, South Africa. This was shortly after Nelson Mandela had gotten out of jail. So it was an exciting time to be in the country. And I was doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training for the top 100 companies in South Africa in areas of employment equity, gender equity, affirmative action. And I love that type of work. But what made it even more exciting was in our downtimes, we would go into the townships or rural villages and once again, get involved in self-empowerment projects. Now, when I was in South Africa is when I really started hearing about the work of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm from Seattle. Yes, I knew who Bill and Melinda Gates were, but their foundation had a very small profile in the city. They wanted all the focus to be on their work that they were doing. And then and now the bulk of their work is on the continent of Africa. So I started hearing about them. I thought, well, when I go back home to Seattle, I'd love to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So that's what I did. Came back, ended up working as a grant maker. And that was a great training ground because it taught me two very important things. One, how wealthy people think about their money. And two, what they think about when they're about to give that money away. And what is the process and what is the criteria for giving their money away. And so I was working as a grant maker for the organization, meaning I'm one of those people that's saying, yes, we will fund this project, or no, we are not going to fund that project, or no, we're not going to fund that organization, and why. And I learned very quickly that there was a real disconnect between the organizations that needed the money and this big foundation who was giving out the money. They weren't talking to each other. And there was a real disconnect around communities of color and organizations serving communities of color or led by people of color. I found that there was a real pattern of the money going to the usual suspects. And so I started consulting part-time while I was working full-time to help organizations, particularly those led by communities of color, to understand what it takes to get on the radar of these big foundations, how to position yourself for the funding and how to qualify for the funding and how to find funding that's available for your project. So I did that part-time for a couple of years. And ultimately, my little side hustle just outgrew my full-time gig. So I had been at the foundation for probably about a decade at this point. So I decided to just take the leap and do the consulting full-time. So that's what I do now. I'm a full-time fund development, capacity building consultant that operates through that racial equity and social justice lens in all that I do. Mm-hmm.
That's so exciting, Pamela. And what I love about your work and the way you talk about what you do is that the understanding and that realization that you had early on in your story of the money was not going to where it was needed, but it was saying it was earmarked for supporting communities, POC communities and POC businesses, but
Right.
the money wasn't going there. And so my next question to you is, what are some strategies that you implemented in your work and that you help others implement when thinking about how to access the funds, how to identify funds, and
Mhm.
then access them for the work that other people of color in their business or even as individual creatives seek to do?
Right. Well, one of the main reasons, and this is goes across the board for, you know, probably just all businesses, of communities of color or people, running businesses, if they're a person of color, is that historically we are out of the loop of networking. Oftentimes, uh, businesses get money because they know somebody or they're working with somebody or they're in partnership with somebody. And the same thing holds true in philanthropy. I was actually really surprised by that, right? I'm just thinking, oh, there's a bunch of do-gooders and everybody's just out there to make a difference and make the world a better place, all rainbows and unicorns. And then when I get in there, I realize, okay, you're operating under some of the same systemic racist policies that affect our world at large. And why wouldn't you? Because the same thinking is being applied. And so what I really work with organizations is, how do you get on the radar of these foundations? You can't get funding if they don't know who you are. Now, I am not suggesting that there was some malicious intent in all of this, but what I'm saying is that for so many of these foundations, we are invisible to them. We're not connected to them, so they just don't even know that we exist. They would like to know, but they're not connected to our communities. They wouldn't even know where to go to find us. They are not connected to the organizations that we are a part of, so they have no awareness of where we are, what we're doing, or anything like that. So organizations, particularly nonprofits led by people of color, serving communities of color, need to be proactive in networking with organizations and with funders. Plain bottom line, if they don't know you, they cannot fund you. And you need to take that proactive step of making sure that they know who you are. That can be as simple as contacting them, giving them a phone call saying, can I take you out to coffee? We're in your neighborhood, we're in your city, would love to just for you to just have some introduction of who we are and what we are about. It can be that simple. Again, historically speaking, funders fund who they know. That's why when I was working as a grant maker, I kept seeing all these funds kept going to the same organizations over and over and over again. I'm like, do we not know anybody else? But the fact was, no, they did not. And they're like, how do we find other people? And how do we know? And there is no way, because they are not connected. Their networks and our networks are not the same. And so somebody has to make that bridge between their networks and our networks. And program officers like myself or development directors of color can often do that. But again, historically speaking, development directors do not look like us. And development directors, their job is to ensure, where the funding is, to connect with communities. But if they're not of the community, then they are connecting with who they know. And same thing with program officers. If they are not from that community, they're looking for who they know and how they can connect with who they know. So that aspect of networking, trying to get on the radar, is so important. Really building that bridge. That is most of what I really help organizations to do. That's like the first step. Again, as I said, if they don't know you, they can't fund you.
I think that's so powerful. And I think that a lot of times when we, whenever that realization comes, it may come really early, or, what you're sharing with us is so powerful, of saying like, this is historical, it's systemic, and it is the reality
Yes.
for many businesses of color, and even create individuals. Maybe you don't even have a business, but
Right.
you're trying to seek to move in a space that historically hasn't been designed for you. And
Exactly.
so, right. And so the fact of the matter that you can take back a little bit of power and move with that intention of saying, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm just going to, I always forget that you don't have, before you even have an ask, you can just want to say, hey, this is who I am. You know, how can I take you out to, can I learn more about your foundation?
Absolutely. And you know, that is, you made a very good point. Before you make the ask, introduce yourself. People are not going to give money to organizations they don't know. They don't know what the leadership is. They're like, nobody, no funder wants to put their money in a black hole. And a black hole is if they don't know who you are, they don't know anything about your practices or what you do. The first step to getting and sustaining fundraising is introducing yourself, sharing your story, and making sure as many people as possible know that story. And so, yes, it's a matter of introduction. It's really relationship building, or what I like to call friend raising versus fundraising. The friend raising comes first. You have to build those relationships. That's when they know you, they feel comfortable with you. There's a trust level there that will more easily precipitate funding.
I love how you change that framework, because it's always, fundraising feels very daunting.
Yes.
At any stage, in
Yes.
any realm. But if I'm thinking about friend raising or building relationships, so my question is it's more attainable. And so my question about that is, how do you, and maybe you have an anecdotal story around this, but how do you help small businesses and even individuals who are moving in creative worlds, like, and want to find ways of how to build their table, how to identify who is someone that can be a friend to what I'm doing, and how to say, oh, we're not in alignment. So could you speak more about that? And maybe you have a story that kind of helps describe like what your process is in helping organizations do that.
Right. There's a lot wrapped up in that question, but let me see if I can parse it out. The first thing is what is your story? A lot of people are like, oh, well, I know what it is, but I'm saying this needs to be crafted. You don't want to wing your story. When you asked me, tell me my story, and I was telling you about South Africa and all that, it is the same story no matter who asks me, no matter who tells me. If you had asked me that last year, you would have heard the exact same thing, because that is crafted, right? I know exactly what I'm going to say, exactly what those talking points are. That is key, because when you are an organization, you need to gain momentum in terms of having as many people possible learn and hear about you. Now, if you're telling one story, and then your each of your board of directors is telling a whole nother story, and then your staff has a whole nother story, and then your volunteers tell another story, all that's doing is creating confusion. Nobody knows exactly what you're doing, because somebody be like, well, I was talking to Bob and he said this organization did this, or I was talking to Sally and she said you did this, and I was talking to somebody else and they said, wow, maybe is this even the same organization? What exactly do you do? You don't want that kind of confusion. So it's best to actually craft the story. I actually work with individuals on crafting their story so that they know it, they can teach it to their staff, they can train their board and everybody in their organization. If they are asked, what is your story? Or what are you about? The exact same thing is being said. That is key. And one of the things I say, just to make it kind of break it down about how that works, I always say that your story is like your hit song. And there was that song not that long ago by Beyonce, put a ring on it. And everywhere you go, you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, you're hearing put a ring on it, single ladies. And she's in concert, she's singing Single Ladies. I think even Saturday Night Live was doing parodies of Single Ladies. That song became a hit, not because you heard it once, not because you heard it twice, not because you heard it 20 times, but you heard it over and over and over and over again. It was on rotation. That's what they'd say in the industry, I guess, playing a song over and over again, because they know the more people hear the song, the more likely they are to buy the song, to buy into the song, to learn the song, to know the song, to go to the concert, to buy Beyonce's album. The more they hear it, the more connected they are to it. And your story is your hit song. You need to keep that thing on rotation. You need to make sure everybody's singing it and singing it and singing it. And even if they don't know all the lyrics to your song, at least they'll know the hook. Put a ring on it, right? That is so popular these days. There's people who probably said that term, put a ring on it, and don't even realize it comes from a song by Beyonce. That's
Correct.
how popular it's become part of our vernacular, right? Our slang and vernacular. Put a ring on it. That's how much that song impacted. And that's what your nonprofit story has to do. You have to make sure as many people as possible hear that story. And so what does that mean? You can't take it for granted. You have to create opportunities for people to hear your story. That might be gathering people together. Why? Just so you can share your story, just so you can sing your hit song, right? Because if you're just waiting for the perfect opportunity, that might not ever happen. So create opportunities. It doesn't have to be fancy. You could, invite people out to happy hour, invite people to the park, invite people over to your house for dinner. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a big group, it could be a small group, but you have to ensure on a regular basis, more and more people are hearing your hit song, hearing your story. And what many nonprofits do is that they have this small group of people that they know or whatever, or that they interact with, their stakeholders, and they will only sing their song to them. And I'm like, well, those stakeholders, they already know your song. The key is getting it to people who have never heard it. So you have to think about, how do we create those opportunities for other people to hear our story? And what I really encourage people to do is it's all about, again, networking. We, as individuals, we only know so many people, right? And once we know those people, we just don't know any other people. And unless some of the people I know introduce me to other people that I've never met yet, then my circle can grow. And so what it's required is not only that you share your story, but that you encourage people who've heard your story to share it with other people. It's kind of in the same way that social media works. You put a post out there. What do you want people to do? Share it, right?
Yeah, you want the shares
You
more
want
than the likes.
shares, more than the likes.
Yeah.
You want the share because you want it to go as far and wide. And if you just have to allow, if it's just up to me to share the story, I can only share it with people I know, but you can share it to all of your network, and other people can share it to all of their network, and so on and so on and so on. That's the power of your story and how it can gain momentum. And again, people say, well, so I do all that, then what's the point? Goes back to the original. If people don't know you, they can't fund you. If people don't know you, they can't send you a donation. The more people know about you, the more likely they are then to send you a donation. And again, the more people that you are networked with, when it comes time to ask for money, now you have a vast network you can go to. But if you haven't done that work, when it comes time to ask for money, then you end up going to the exact same people you've always gone to, the friends and family and relatives who are now running every time they see you coming, because they know, oh my gosh, here she comes again. She's going to ask for money. It's that time of the year again, right? And that's where you don't want to get to. You don't want to, just go to a well until it runs dry. You have to continually get that story out there, share that story, so more and more and more people hear about who you are and what you do. That is the basis for really growing and developing and starting that foundation of fundraising.
When I hear too, I love this, that there's some things that we have to do and start thinking about, not just about doing the thing, but also talking about the thing. So that sometimes you may go to a place like an event or, I know I live in Brooklyn. And so there are always like Block party events, community events that many different businesses can get tables at. And it's not necessarily about selling your product. Sometimes it has to be about just telling your story. And I think that
absolutely,
I forget that too, as a creative, that like, I just want to do the thing that I say that I'm doing. But
Right.
if other people don't know, and I don't have, like you said, I'm not building that network or building that table, then
Mhm.
I won't have the support to sustain what I want to do, the financial
Absolutely.
support to sustain what I'm saying I
Absolutely.
do, you
Right.
know?
And I always get the question then as people say, well, how long do I have to do that for? Right. And I always say it like this, as long as Macy's has been in business, have they ever stopped trying to sell? No. Why? Now you would think they have a name, they've been around probably 100 years now. They could literally stop selling or stop advertising and people would still know who Macy's is, right? Maybe, right? But they have never stopped. And when you hear about Macy's, they're not just trying to encourage you. They're not sending you poems through the mail. They are trying to sell their product. That's what they do, right? And you have to think of it the same way. It is advertising, and you have to stay front of mind with people because there is so much noise out there. How do you stand out? How do you ensure that somebody's going to know who you are if you're not continuously talking about it and being front of mind with people? That is what advertising is all about, is ensuring that when it comes time for me to be in the grocery store and I'm really thirsty and I want something to drink, that I pick up that can of Coke and not some off brand that I've never heard of, right? Because I know exactly what's in the can of Coke, right? And
Correct.
that's the whole point, that when people come time and they're like, wow, it's Christmas, I feel like donating to a wonderful charity, I feel like giving back. Who should I give back to? You want to make sure that you are front of mind with them. And hopefully it's because they just saw you at the block party, or they just received a little postcard in the mail, or they just got your e-newsletter, or they just got a phone call from you. Something. You have to stay front of mind with people so that when they come time for them to give, they remember who you are. That is a challenge. And
Yeah.
one of the things, especially if you are a creative, right? Because you're thinking, hey, look, I'm a creative. I want to focus on my work, on my art, on my music, or whatever it is. I am not the PR person. I'm not the marketing person. I'm not the whatever person. Well, then you need to find that person to do that for you. It's not, we'd like to believe that if I build it, they will come. That field of dreams is a dream. Trust me. You need somebody working in your corner. Now, I get it. If you're a small business, you can't always hire somebody, but volunteers can do that for you, right? It's not so academic or not so complex that a volunteer can do it. It's just a matter of keeping your name out there. Whether that's, again, emailing, postcards, or making Facebook posts or social media posts or something has to keep your name out there. Something of networking. Gosh, you said you're in New York. There's probably business events and going on every second of the day. I can only imagine, as busy as New York is, right? So you need to be out there in that. Now you might say, oh, but that's not an artistic gathering, right? That's okay, because even people who are non-artistic can still give a donation, right? So
Right.
you need to be out there. So if it's not you personally out there networking, is there volunteers who are like, hey, I would love to just go socialize and pass out your business cards or your brochures and go to all these different business networking events and talking you up. There might be people, you need somebody to do that for you. If not you, somebody has to do that, because otherwise there is that old adage of the starving artist. Yeah, you know why they're starving? Because nobody heard about them until after, till they starve to death, right? You don't let that be you. Don't let that be you, right? And if you keep that momentum of being out there, then guaranteed, it will be reflected in your bottom line.
So what I hear, which I love everything that you're saying, Pamela, and it's going to allow me to do another plug, because this is also about plugging who you are and what you do, and that we're partnering with you, through this help desk service. So the biggest thing that resonated with me was just like finding your community. And those community could be people that, you know, that not necessarily that you pay right away or somebody that you're hiring, but people who
Yeah.
believe in you and
Yes.
in the mission of the business, the people who are always in your corner, who
Mhm.
are wanting, and who are in alignment with your mission and vision
Right.
and want to see this succeed in whatever form, as an individual artist, as a small nonprofit or an LLC.
Mhm.
That is important, that we, especially as businesses of color and people of color, that we find each other in our communities,
Yes.
that will support us, because then
Absolutely.
that allows, like you said, to amplify the story. And
Mhm.
then if you don't have a community and you're saying, I may be in a new place, or I just, made a hard left and I'm shifting into this now, this is a great opportunity to come to the help desk. You are someone that we are looking for, because here is a community of people, consultants, who are saying that they're in alignment with helping you succeed. Right.
Right. Right.
That you were standing and waiting in the wings to say, hey, I want to sit and think through this with you. I want to sit and help you craft that teachable, memorable story. And then
Right.
I want to sit with you and help you identify other people and ways of reaching other people to get them at your table and a part of your community.
Absolutely.
So I just
Absolutely.
encourage everyone who's watching right now to understand that that programs like this don't come along too often. But
Mm.
that if you are saying, I think I love what I'm hearing and how you, Pamela, are articulating what are the steps in starting to fundraise for yourself in small ways, that you would support yourself and come to help desk if you're saying, I don't know how to do that, or I don't have that readily available.
Right.
So I have another question for you, because I'm just so
Yeah.
excited about the way you're talking about building this community. And so my question is, has there ever been a time, maybe in supporting another business, or even in your own personal journey, where you were like, okay, so I built this community and I built this story, and now maybe because I need to be responsive or whatever I'm seeing in my industry, I need to shift. And how would you advise someone who is saying, I did that, but now I may need to shift, and I don't know how to pivot?
So, can you clarify that a little bit? So pivot
Yes.
how? Pivot from one industry to another,
And
or what?
well, I think maybe it could even be that after a while you've had this story and you've gotten, maybe some momentum, but not where you want to go. And you're realizing, oh, it's because I need to pivot, either in maybe in the people, that the communities that I serve. Maybe my base is too wide of who I say I want to
Okay.
support. And so how do I do that? And what are some actionable steps that maybe you've, given people advice to do to
Mhm.
kind of make that pivot
Right.
successfully?
So that is a great question. And that happens a lot, especially in fundraising, right? You build out this funding strategy and it's like, okay, let's go for it. And then it doesn't produce the results. And you're like, okay, what happened? We had the strategy, we did everything. What happened? The key is being able to recalibrate when necessary. Don't wait until, I always tell my organizations, don't wait till after the year has passed and now you've got 1 week left to meet your funding goals. And now what are you going to do? Is you need check your progress on a regular basis. And so you need to have some type of benchmarks and milestones that you're meeting to know, is that strategy working, right? Because if it's not working, don't keep doing it for 3 years, right?
Right,
If it's not
right.
working, try something else. Now, people will then say, well, how do I know what to do? And I always say this, ask. How do you know what to do? Ask. For example, you have this story out there, and you're telling a lot of stories, right? And you're creating opportunities, but it's not quite bringing in maybe the results or drawing people to you that you thought. Well, then do like a quick little survey or assessment. Don't we get those all the time? A little survey about, what was your impression when you heard that story, right? Get some feedback from either your network and from your community. Get some feedback. Does this resonate with you? Does this not resonate with you? What did you think about this? We said this. What was your impression when you heard that? You have to be able to it has to be a communication. Again, you're building relationships. A relationship is a two-way street. It can't be just one person talking out. You have to have that be able to somehow get feedback from your community, from your stakeholders, from your whomever, your donor base, whoever. You have to allow for feedback. They will tell you, right? So it's not just you just continue doing it. Then they might say, well, the way that you framed it, I didn't really like that. That kind of actually put me off. They won't tell you it turned them off, but if you ask them, they will. But they typically, this is human nature. We don't generally just offer up negativity,
Yeah. Right.
unless somebody asks us. Our response, if something did or we didn't like something, we just never go back, or we just never tune in again, or we just move to someplace else. We typically don't just go back and, same thing like say with a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food, typically you're not going to turn around and write a letter to them to say how much you didn't like the food. You just will never go back. And you may tell your friends, don't go there, right? But that restaurant may never know why you didn't like their food. And they could continue to be producing that same dish over and over and over again. But if they ever came back and asked you, you were here, you ate this food and you never came back. Why? Now you say, well, the dish had too much garlic in it. If you change that, I'd come back, right? Now they have the opportunity to change. And it's the same thing in your business. There has to be some feedback loop that you can get information from. And so again, as you are doing those things to get your message out there, whether it's emails, whether it's Facebook posts, maybe one of those Facebook posts will be like, hey, we'd love to hear your opinion about what we're doing. What are some things that we could do that might get more attention, or what would you like to see us do? Have some type of feedback loop so where you are actually getting information back. That will be very valuable so that you can make the necessary shifts that you need to make that will have the biggest impact. Otherwise, you're really guessing. If you're not asking for feedback, you're just guessing like, okay, this is not working. Let me cross my fingers and try something else and see if that works. Whereas you've got the feedback, then you could be making some strategic shifts that could really have a big impact.
I love that. And I never thought about this before, but it makes so much sense. It's like the time you put in understanding, your business and what you are offering in your store, you have to put that into how you raise funds. And a lot of that is, like you said, communication and relationship. And so I got to have, that story, that memorable, repeatable, repetitive story. I have to have the community of supporters, people at my table, that even if I can't pay them, that they are there amplifying my story. And if I can, great, absolutely, that I can hire someone to do that. And then I've got to have feedback. I've got to be able to calibrate continually as I'm raising funds to see what is working, what is not, and how do I, work at building relationships with funders, with donors. So my question to you, are there some things, like some tips or some, just some baseline things that you could maybe share with us about how to talk to and build relationships with funders, with donors? I know there's different categories because there may be people that are angel donors. There may be like foundations that give money, in a philanthropic way. And so what are some ways that we could start thinking about communicating effectively and building relationships when we are thinking about fundraising and development?
Right. So you really have to understand who you're talking to. For example, you said like an angel investor. Okay, if there's an angel investor, oftentimes they are looking to invest in a business, but you better believe they're looking for a return on their investment, right? So they may invest $100,000, but that's because they're expecting $130,000 back, right? There, as you grow and develop, or, however they structure that, sometimes, to me, that's the essence of Shark Tank. If you ever watch Shark Tank on TV, it's like, yes, there's these angel investors there who are willing to invest in your business, but they might want a cut of that business in some way to make it worth their while. So you have to know, who are you talking to? Is it an angel investor who's actually expecting a financial return on their investment? Foundations, this is what I always say, is for foundations, they want a return on their investment, their charitable investment, but not a financial return. They want the PR return, meaning they want to be able to tell their board of directors and their staff, look at all the great work that we're doing in the community. It's they funded you, it's you doing the work, but they need that story. They have people that they have stakeholders that they have to answer to. They have a board of trustees, they have a board of directors, and that board of directors is like, look, we had this pool of money and we're giving this money out. What impact is that money having? And they better be able to come back and say, oh my gosh, we funded this and look at the work that they are doing. They have grown by leaps and bounds. And isn't that exciting? A foundation they chart their success by the impact that their money gives. So they will give their money to organizations or where it's going to have the biggest bang for their buck. So when you recognize that and you're talking to them, you need to talk about the impact that their investment in you will have. If you give me this $50,000, oh my gosh, this is how it will benefit you in terms of, your name will, have a greater impact in the community. More people will know your name or something like that, or whatever it is, or, if you give us this donation and we will name the art gallery after you, right? And your name will be on the side of the building or whatever it is, right? They're looking for that win-win situation. If you're just looking for what's in it for you, that makes it very difficult for people to fund you, because even funders, even though they're giving philanthropy, about philanthropy and charity, they still need the good story. They still are looking for a win-win. And so you have to talk about it in terms of impact, not just on what it's going to do today, but how that investment in you today is going to grow and increase even tomorrow and next year and the year beyond that. That big picture is what they're looking for. It's like, wow, imagine that for only $10,000 or for only $50,000, we could really be the, whatever in this community. And that is very, very important for funders to know. So thinking about that win-win is very important when you're talking about it. Otherwise, you just sound like, just give me money, just gimme. And that's a turnoff for a lot of organizations. No matter how worthy your cause or how beautiful your work, nobody just, wants to be thought of that, I'm just a cash cow and I'm just here just to dole out money. There has to be some give and take, what's the win-win for me? If it's not a financial return, what's the win-win for me if I give you this? And impact is huge in that regard for them. And because, they want to be able to, when they put out the next company newsletter, they want to have your picture in it with them and like, look, we funded so-and-so and look at this wonderful work that they're doing. Oh my gosh, that money that we invested in them went so far, and look at all the exciting whatever happened because of it. I don't know, whatever it is, but think about what is that win-win for them. So you kind of almost have to put yourself in their shoes and think about what can you say that will give them that win-win, because something that you had also said, or maybe I'd said it, is that you're not the only one out there. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of competition out there. And people always ask me, well, how do I stand out above all the competition? And it's not a matter of necessarily standing out or being so unique that nobody else is doing it. Again, I'm a consultant. There's probably a million consultants in the world, but you have to recognize that that there's also a lot of money out there, plenty of money out there. All you want is just somebody to invest in you. You don't have to compete. You just want to be able for people to feel like that you are a good investment in whether it's nonprofit investment or whether it's an angel investor investment, whatever that is. And you know, because there's more than enough money. There's more than enough money. It's not like we are like if it's all a pie, and if I take a big slice of pie, then there's just a little slice of pie left for you. No, it's a river. And I can take out as much water from that river as I want, and I will not decrease the water level in the river because there's more water coming behind. That's how you have to think about it. And so you don't have to think about, well, you know, am I taking away from somebody else? No, there's plenty for everybody. And the people that are for example, for me, I'm a small business and I have clients. And I don't take away from any other consultant in Seattle. Why? Because the ones that work with me because of me. And that's the uniqueness. You get me. and I'm something that you don't get if you work with Joe Blow down the street. Then you get Joe Blow. But I say that because there are people that are attracted to me and want to work with me and my style of working. And so it doesn't matter who that Joe Blow is down the street, because my clients will not want to work with Joe. They're looking for what I can do for them, not what Joe can do for them. So Joe and I are not competing at all. He's got his clients, I've got mine. All I need to do is just find the ones that are appealing to me. And it's the same way in your business. You don't have to feel like you have to do something so incredibly unique, you know, that nobody else in the world has ever thought about ever before, right? It's just about just appealing to the people, you know, that are appealing to you. Be authentic, and you will draw the people that are authentically drawn to you.
What is so exciting about what you were saying, Pamela? First of all, a week ago, and Shamara said the exact same thing. Shamara, co-word consultant, and that is there's a streamline of truth about how to move with intention, how to move with awareness as a person of color in business, and especially when you're moving in the arts business, landscape. That there is enough for all of us. And I think
Yes.
that a lot of times that belief of scarcity causes us to maybe sometimes not invest and abandon an idea or a plan too early, or not take the time to really build out, when we face adversity. Because the reality is, like you said in the beginning, is that there are barriers, there are clear barriers, and we don't want to pretend like they're not there, and that there hasn't been historical problems with access for people of color when we talk about business and access to capital, right? But there is a way of moving with intention and shifting the belief, because I do believe that there is a lens that says that we are in competition, like that idea of a zero-sum theory, that I can't succeed unless you don't, right? Right. That is not true. And especially when you're thinking about fundraising and development, that you have to believe that there's enough money to go around.
Absolutely.
You have to believe that there are going to be people who are in alignment with you. And so my question is, and it's going to be one, maybe a little bit of a complex one, but I do want to talk about and get your thoughts on, how do I, so I know you said about the story and building your table. And I guess how do you ensure, what are some what is a word of advice or some tips on how to ensure that I'm not taking money or chasing after money that maybe is not in alignment with my mission and vision as a
Mhm.
person of color or as an art, as a business. And so that, where's the balancing? How do I learn how to balance, like, okay, this is something that's within my realm to be able to do, to build this relationship with this funder or this donor. But
Mhm.
maybe this is something I'm not willing to, and to not, you know, not waver on. And so how
Right.
do you make those decisions, and how do you personally consult people on how to do that?
Yeah, that is a great question. And it's so true. And I tell this to my clients all the time that all money is not good money because you have to decide, is it worth it? Some of that money comes with some strings attached. And it's like, do you want to deal with that? Now, the only way you know that is because you're in relationship, hopefully, and you're having some conversations, right? The key thing is when you are talking with people is really wanting to, you say in alignment. To me, it's really in alignment with my values. Right. So when I'm working, particularly, again, my lane is nonprofits, right? So I'm working with nonprofits. And so one of the things that I always ask them to do is to have a policy called an ethical gift acceptance policy, meaning that that is a policy that says, if we accept your gift, this is what it means, and this is what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that if we accept your gift, that now all of a sudden you get a seat on the board, or if we accept your gift, that now you get some say in who we hire, or if we accept your gift, that this and this and that. It details an ethical gift policy so that people don't think, and because sometimes that happens very often. It's like, wow, I gave you this big gift. Surely that gives me some power and some say over how you do business, right? And that especially if you're a nonprofit accepting charity, some of those donors, yeah, there's a lot of strings attached. And so you want to be able to ensure that you are very clear about that the gifts you accept are in alignment with your values. So again, for and I'm just gonna throw something out there. For me personally, one of my values for me as a small business owner is work-life balance, right? And if I had wanted to work in that rat race and work in 12, 15 hours a day, I would have stayed in corporate environment, right? I got
Right,
out of that
right,
for a reason. I don't
right.
want to work that way, right? That was stressing me out. And so for me, there are certain jobs that I might not take because it will cause my work-life balance to be out of balance. Or some clients that I work with, and I can tell, from that first phone call, it's like, oh my gosh, this person is going to be the person who's calling me up at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to, talk about. So I'm like, all money is not good money. And you have to be willing to say no. That is very, very difficult when you're hungry, when the bank account is really slim. But that's when it's important that you set your standards about what you will accept and what you won't. It will pay off in the long run, I promise you. Another thing about that is really in setting your, really knowing what your value is. And that is when you're setting your pricing structure. I tell people all the time, I might not be the person you want to work for because I don't cheapen myself. I might not be the highest paid consultant out there, but I am definitely not the cheapest either. And so, people will always want to get a deal. It's like, oh, gosh, that's so expensive. Want to work with you, but can you cut it in half? And I always say, no, sorry, I can't. I can refer you to somebody who's more in line with your budget, but that's not me, right? And sometimes that's sometimes that we start giving away pieces of ourselves, right? Because we're trying to get the money. And then the next thing you know, you're working twice as hard, making twice as less money. right? Because you keep downgrading your services or downgrading your worth or violating your own standards of values about work-life balance or whatever standard it is that you want, right? You have to be very clear for yourself and be willing to say no, be willing to turn away money, be willing to turn away a client if it is out of alignment with what is valuable to you. Right. So that is so important, especially as a small business, because it could be very easy to just be that hustle all the time. Grind. Even the words we use, hustle, grind. I don't hustle. I don't grind. Right. I enjoy and I get paid. Right.
Right.
So yeah, because that stress, it can be, it's your business. It can be what you want it to be. It can be what you want to be. And if you need that flexibility or that ease and flow, I'm all about the ease and flow. If that's what's important to you, then you have to make sure that that the people you're working with, or that that funding or that fundraiser, is in alignment with that. And typically, that's really important if you're working with like an angel investor, like, oh my gosh, we just found this person. They're willing to give us, $1 million. Okay, great. What are they asking in return? Do you want that $1 million? Because maybe they're asking for a huge stake in your organization. Is that really worth it? Right. Kind of going back again to like Shark Tank. Sometimes if you've ever watched that, you'll see sometimes, the risk is so high, or the take that investor wants is so high. And that person's like, wow, I did all the work. It's my idea. It's my intellectual property. And seriously, you want 50% of that? So you have to really, weigh those things for yourself, because you will always be tempted to go against that, to either downgrade yourself or to take on a job that is just going to stress you out or violate your values. And so you have to just draw your line in the sand and be accountable to yourself to not cross that line. Mm-hmm.
And I love that the drawing the line is the thing that, again, has to come before the ask too.
Yes.
That you're saying that I need to know not just my story, I need to know my values. I need to create, please remind me of this, what you were saying, the policy that's in place of like, this money means this, it doesn't mean this, right?
Right. Yes, specifically for nonprofits is that they should have it's called an ethical gift acceptance policy, because so often, that money, you think, oh, this is great, we just so and so just sent us a check for $50,000, and what's not said is that donor is now expecting something in return, and that gets you in a really sticky place. And now it's like, you really, really need that $50,000 though, or you already spent the $50,000. Now what are you going to do? Right. Because you can't give it back. Right. And so if you have a policy in place, and so as you make that transparent to people who give you money, so they can't come back and say, oh, well, I thought that meant that I could refer my nephew for that job opening and you were going to hire him. I thought that was what the $50,000 was for. And you're like, nope, that's not what that meant. Your $50,000 was a free gift with nothing attached to it. But sometimes that needs to be in writing, right? Just so that there's no confusion, no misunderstanding. And again, when it comes to money oftentimes is power. Right. And even in the charitable sector, that gift sometimes comes with the implied benefit that somehow there is some perk that donor is going to get because they made that big donation to you. And you want to make it very, very clear. Maybe you do have a perk. There's nothing wrong with perks, but make sure it's a perk that you agree with.
Right. It's in alignment with your values.
Yeah.
I have, we're wrapping up, but I do have one very specific question around thinking about accelerators when you're a young business. And so I know, because you said something that kind of helped me think about it took my mind to be thinking about, there are ways to, raise capital or get access to capital and build relationships quickly through accelerator programs. Are there some, ways of thinking and navigating that you can offer up to people of color and young businesses that are saying, I see this accelerator, sometimes they're asking for a percentage in my business, or, they're saying, you're in an ideation stage now, that's great. But this many, whatever down the road. And so they're asking maybe something that, how do you mitigate that? How do you navigate wanting to maybe be in an accelerator program that is maybe giving you access to relationships and building capital for whatever you're creating, and understanding what those asks are? What are some tips on how to do that?
Yeah, and that really comes down to really understanding, again, what it is that you want out of your business. And I say that in a lot, for one thing, in terms of what is the financial return. Basically, that's one of the main things we're really interested in. What is that financial return? So if you're in an accelerator and they are expecting a certain amount or percentage that maybe either of your business or that you are giving back as a part of being part of that accelerator, is that something that you're willing to live with, right? And that's a hard question, because sometimes, again, when you're hungry, when you're new, you're like, yes, yes, yes. And you almost say yes to anything because you want to get going. But you really want to think about that. Is it worth it to you? Sometimes it's worth it, right? One of the things that I did when I started my business is that I actually hired a business coach. And the reason I did is, now, do you always need a business coach? No, but I hired one because I wanted to fast track my business. And a coach, just like if you were in sports, a coach is designed to bring out the best in you, to be able to train you, to be able to tell you, stop doing this, do this, and to make you work probably harder than you ever worked before. That's what a coach does, brings out the best in you. And I wanted that. And you can always go, for me, it was beneficial to me to have that coach so that I could sidestep mistakes that I'm otherwise I might it'd just be trial and error. Right now, would I have still been successful in my business without the coach? I think yes, because I'm still me, right? But would I have done it as quickly? Probably not, because trial and error takes time. You do something, it doesn't work, you learn from it, you have to go back, start again, do it again, learn from it, go back and start again, and do it again, doesn't work, go back and start again. And a coach tells you, just don't do any of those things, just start right here and you'll get there faster, right? And so now that was a cost. That was not free by any means. I had to decide, is it worth it to me? Had I started when I was 23, maybe I would have said not worth it. But at the age that I started, I'm like, I need to hurry up and get going. And I need a coach to help me jumpstart and fast track this business thing, right? So you have to, there are other things like that you have to really weigh. What is it worth it to you? And you really have to be honest with yourself about that. And because there's typically always a cost involved with that. The same thing applies, say, for example, hiring a consultant, right? This help desk is an amazing thing because the service is free to the people who come to the help desk. Come on, people, get a clue, right? If it's free, otherwise, do you know how you have to pay for that? And when you have to pay for consultants, it's like, okay, do I want to pay for a consultant to help me do this, or is it worth it to me that I just figure it out on my own, right? And you may figure, hey, it's worth it just to figure it out on your own. But so you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of those types of decisions. And I know you're kind of saying, is there one thing that you can say that people can do? And it can't, because it really is an individual decision for people about what's best for them, but definitely have those conversations with yourself. What is worth it to me? Is, what are the pros and the cons of going down this road, right? Mm-hmm.
Agreed. And I think that that's a great place to kind of wrap this conversation, because I cannot say enough about how amazing it is to have access at this level to the expertise that you offer, Pamela. And so I just want to reiterate to what you just said, that this is free. This is a free service.
Yes.
It's an opportunity to talk with Pamela one-on-one and to say, hey, I don't know how to create this ethical business, plan, or I need help and strategizing on how to talk to this funder, or I don't know what an accelerator is.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about, trying to understand or count the cost of, like, is that worth it for me and my business to get the money that I need? And so I think that it's so important to reiterate that if you have these questions, if you are feeling challenged, then the help desk is for you. And Pamela is here, ready to help you think through and strategize to get to the next place you want to in funding in your business. So
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you, and I'm so thankful for your time. And I just want to, I'm going to share my screen again really quickly to say that we are still offering, I'm moving through really quickly, signups for help desk. So it is a free service. There's a QR code on the screen. You can scan it and start to sign up, and then start participating in the ways we described. You can sign up for a one-on-one with Pamela. You are able to, there's a partner, Creative Study, and they are offering free business courses with actionable steps and tools to help you move forward and think about these things about finance before you talk to someone like Pamela, so that you maybe can come to the room or come to the table with some things kind of thought through before you have a 1-hour consultation with her. As well as, again, I want to reiterate that we at Arts Business Collaborative are also offering fiscal sponsorship. So maybe you are not a 501c3, but are looking to move into that world or need that type of support for a project. We are here to offer that service for you. And there's many different plans. And if you have questions and want to learn more, please email us at programs@artsbusinesscollaborative.org. Pamela, thank you again so much for your time. Thank you for all of your words of wisdom. I can't even tell you how valuable this is. I learned a lot, and I'm sure people at home watching did too. So thank you again. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen to say goodbye. And I hope to see you again. And Pamela, we will talk more.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.